In the vast, silent stretches of space, where stars shimmered like distant diamonds against the black canvas, humanity had grown used to the quiet. Space was beautiful, yes, but it was also lonely. For decades, humans had explored the solar system, sent probes to distant planets, and even established small outposts on the Moon and Mars. Yet nothing could prepare them for what came next. It started as a faint signal, barely noticeable, drifting through the cosmic void like a whisper. Most of the communication teams ignored it at first. Static and noise were common in space signals. It was rare for anything to stand out. But Lieutenant Arya Voss, a keen and determined officer in the United Earth Communications Division, noticed it immediately. Something about the signal felt different. Arya had spent years studying cosmic frequencies, decoding messages that were often random noise, remnants of distant celestial activity, or even artificial signals sent from human outposts. She had a mind tuned to patterns and anomalies. When she saw the strange repetition in the faint signal, a chill ran down her spine. It wasn't natural. No star, no asteroid, no planet had ever produced a signal like this. The rhythm, the pulses, and the way it repeated itself over hours suggested intelligence. Someone or something was trying to communicate. She called over her team, a small group of specialists who had worked with her on analyzing mysterious space signals before. Each of them knew the drill: detect, decode, confirm. But when they all focused on the signal together, the unease grew. This was not just a pattern, it was a message. Arya quickly isolated the frequency and enhanced the signal, filtering out cosmic interference and background noise. As the sound sharpened through their equipment, it became clear this was an SOS. It was a distress call, pleading for help from a civilization far beyond human knowledge. The room fell silent. No one had expected this. The idea of receiving a genuine SOS from another intelligent species had always seemed like a dream, a possibility for science fiction novels, not reality. Yet there it was, unmistakable and urgent. The distress message carried a tone of desperation, a silent scream for survival. It was not just a routine call, it was a warning, an alert from beings who were clearly in grave danger. Arya felt a mix of awe and fear. She knew that humanity had faced crises before, natural disasters and wars on their own planet, but nothing could compare to this. This was an entirely new world, a new reality. She spent hours analyzing the message, breaking down the frequencies, translating patterns into potential meanings. The message was fragmented, distorted by the vast distance it had traveled, but the urgency was unmistakable. Someone was out there, and they were dying meanwhile on Earth. The news of the discovery began to spread among the top levels of the United Earth Council. Governments debated whether responding was wise. Some feared a trap. The universe was vast, and humanity had little knowledge of alien civilizations. What if the signal was a lure, designed to draw humans into danger? Others argued morality. If this was a genuine SOS, humanity had a responsibility to answer, to help a civilization in need. The debate was heated, but Arya didn't have time for politics. Her job was to understand the signal, to decode it, and to prepare humanity to respond if the council approved. As she worked, the pressure mounted. Night after night, Arya and her team pored over the patterns, trying to reconstruct the original message. Each time they made progress, new layers of complexity emerged. The SOS was not simple. It contained coordinates, hints of technology, and fragments of language that were alien yet strangely mathematical in structure. It was as if the civilization behind the call had a mind that worked in ways humans could barely comprehend, but still had some universal logic that Arya could trace. Amidst the technical challenges, Arya couldn't ignore the human side of the story. She imagined the beings who sent the SOS, what they looked like, what their lives were like before disaster struck, and what they must be feeling now. She felt their fear as if it were her own. It was an intense empathy that motivated her even more. She knew that decoding this message wasn't just a technical problem, it was a matter of life and death. Hours turned into days, and as the team slowly deciphered more of the message, a picture began to form. The SOS was from a planet in a distant star system, a world that had once been thriving, full of life and civilization. Now, it was on the brink of collapse. Something had attacked, or perhaps some disaster had struck, leaving the planet's inhabitants desperate and pleading for help. The coordinates embedded in the message suggested a location far beyond humanity's current exploration range. Reaching it would require planning, resources, and courage beyond anything humans had ever attempted. Arya presented her findings to the council. She explained the urgency, the intelligence behind the message, and the moral implications of ignoring it. She spoke passionately about the responsibility humans had, not just as a species capable of space travel, but as a civilization capable of compassion. Some leaders were skeptical, but many were swayed by the clarity and detail of her report. The message was real, the danger was real, and the opportunity to prove humanity's courage and morality was undeniable. Meanwhile, the news filtered down to the public. Humanity reacted with a mix of awe and excitement. People debated whether to trust the SOS, speculated about alien life, and imagined what it would mean if humans ventured to a distant world in response. For the first time in decades, there was a sense of unity, a shared focus on something beyond Earth. It reminded humanity that there was a universe out there full of possibilities, mysteries, and perhaps allies in need. Back in the communications lab, Arya continued her work. She refined the decoding algorithms, reconstructed the SOS with increasing accuracy, and prepared for the moment when humanity would make the decision to respond. She and her team were aware that this could change everything: humanity's understanding of life in the universe, the political dynamics on Earth, and the future of space exploration. There was no turning back. The signal had already entered humanity's history. It was no longer just a faint whisper in the void. It was a call to action, a summons that demanded courage, intelligence, and resolve. And as Arya stared at the reconstructed message on her screen, she felt a strange mixture of fear and determination. The universe was vast, unknown, and possibly dangerous, but it was also calling to humanity, inviting them to rise, to act, and to meet a challenge that no one had ever faced before. Somewhere out there, a civilization was depending on them, hoping that humans would answer. And for the first time, Arya understood that humanity was no longer alone in the cosmos. The discovery of the SOS had shaken humanity to its core. For centuries, humans had looked at the stars with curiosity and wonder, imagining the possibilities of life beyond Earth. Yet when the message arrived, it was no longer just imagination. It was reality. It was a desperate cry from a civilization facing annihilation, a plea for help that could not be ignored. The pressure now fell on the United Earth Council, the governing body responsible for making decisions that affected all of humanity. They were faced with a question that carried enormous consequences. Should humanity respond? Inside the Grand Council chambers, leaders from across the globe debated fiercely. Some were cautious, even fearful. "We don't know what we're dealing with," one diplomat warned, her voice trembling slightly. "It could be a trap. We have no idea if this civilization is friendly, hostile, or even if it truly exists. Sending our fleet into an unknown sector could invite disaster." Others argued passionately for action. "We cannot ignore a call for help," another leader said firmly. "We are the most advanced civilization in this sector. If we have the ability to save lives, we must. This is not just a matter of strategy, it is a matter of morality. This is who we are as humans." The debates went on for hours, with experts presenting technical analyses, risk assessments, and moral arguments. The public waited anxiously for news, but inside the chamber, the weight of responsibility was overwhelming. Every option had risks. Every decision carried consequences. Some argued that sending humanity's most advanced ships might provoke hostility from unknown forces. Others reminded the Council of humanity's history: wars, disasters, and near extinctions, and the resilience that had always seen them through. The room buzzed with tension, and at times it seemed as if no consensus could be reached. Meanwhile, Arya Voss and her team continued to work tirelessly. They refined the decoding of the SOS, extracting more information about the alien civilization and the dangers it faced. Each new detail heightened the urgency. The signal revealed fragments about the attackers, the extent of the destruction, and the coordinates of the planet in distress. It was a civilization technologically advanced enough to send precise messages across light years, yet still vulnerable to a threat they could not withstand. The more Arya analyzed, the clearer it became that responding was not just a moral choice, it was a chance to prevent the total annihilation of an entire species. The Council finally reached a decision, one that would change the course of history. Humanity would respond. The vote was close, with some members reluctantly agreeing, acknowledging that inaction was not an option. With the decision made, the massive task of mobilizing the fleet began. Human engineers, scientists, military officers, and pilots worked around the clock to prepare for a mission unlike any before. It was not just a rescue, it was the deployment of humanity's greatest weapons, the War Titans. These enormous AI-driven machines were the pinnacle of human engineering, capable of both devastating power and complex strategic thinking. Each Titan was a marvel of technology, towering in size, armed with energy-based weaponry, missiles, and defensive shields. They could operate autonomously or be controlled by human pilots. They were designed to fight wars on alien worlds, to face threats that humans could not confront with conventional spacecraft. Yet, despite their power, they were also a symbol of humanity's ingenuity and responsibility. Each Titan represented decades of research, testing, and human effort, and now they were being called upon for a mission that might decide the fate of an entire alien civilization. Arya was assigned a critical role in the mission. She would oversee the communications and analysis team, ensuring that the fleet could interpret any signals from the SOS planet and from potential enemy forces. It was a heavy responsibility, and she felt it keenly. She knew that the success of the mission depended not only on the Titan's firepower but also on her team's ability to understand, interpret, and react to the unfolding situation. Every decision, every calculation could mean life or death for both humans and the aliens they were going to help. As preparations continued, the human population watched with a mixture of awe, hope, and fear. The idea that humanity was about to reach a distant world in response to a call for help captured imaginations everywhere. News outlets, social media, and public forums buzzed with speculation. Would humans encounter a friendly civilization or hostile forces? Could they even survive the journey through unknown space? For the first time in decades, there was a unified focus across the globe. People were waiting for humanity to step into the cosmos as a force of both power and compassion. The fleet itself was a sight to behold. Ships of all sizes, from small reconnaissance vessels to massive carriers transporting the war titans, were positioned in orbital docks, ready to launch. Arya walked among them, feeling a sense of pride mixed with apprehension. These ships were more than machines. They were the embodiment of human determination, designed to face challenges that were unimaginable just years ago. Crew members trained relentlessly, practicing maneuvers, emergency protocols, and coordination with the Titans. Bonds formed quickly, as the team knew that cooperation and trust would be critical once they reached the SOS planet. During this time, the SOS continued to play over the communications network, a constant reminder of the stakes. Its urgency pressed on everyone involved, from scientists and engineers to soldiers and pilots. It was not just a distant signal anymore, it was a living reminder of lives in peril. Arya often found herself listening late into the night, studying every pulse and pattern, imagining the faces of the beings who had sent it. She felt their fear and hope, and it strengthened her resolve. Humanity was about to answer a call that transcended politics, borders, and personal ambition. The journey ahead was daunting. The SOS planet was far beyond any previously explored sector. Travel would take months, requiring precise navigation, resource management, and constant vigilance. The fleet would move through uncharted territories, where dangers lurked not only from space itself but also from potential hostile forces. Every aspect of the mission had to be meticulously planned. Arya and her team worked alongside strategists and engineers to simulate scenarios, anticipate challenges, and develop contingency plans. Despite all the preparations, no one could predict exactly what awaited them. As the launch date approached, tension and excitement filled the air. Families of crew members gathered at observation decks, watching as the ships prepared to depart. Arya stood quietly, reflecting on how humanity had arrived at this moment. From a small, fragile civilization confined to a single planet, humans were now taking a step into the wider universe, not as explorers or conquerors, but as responders to a call for help. There was a sense of purpose that transcended fear, a feeling that they were doing something truly meaningful. Finally, the day came. The fleet, a combination of advanced spacecraft and the towering war titans, launched into space, leaving Earth behind. The planet shrank into the distance, a blue and green marble fading into the darkness. Onboard crews settled into routines, monitoring systems, preparing for the unknown, and waiting for further signals. The SOS had brought them together, uniting humanity in a mission that was as much about courage and compassion as it was about strength and technology. Throughout the journey, Arya continued her work, refining communications, decoding more fragments of the SOS, and preparing for first contact. She knew that the decisions they made in the coming days could determine the fate of both species. There was no room for error, no margin for hesitation. The distant signal, once a faint whisper in the void, had become a call to action, guiding humanity toward a future where their choices would echo across the galaxy. And so, the fleet pressed onward, carrying humanity's greatest war titans toward a distant world in desperate need of help. Each crew member knew the risks, each titan was ready for combat, and every mind on board was focused on one purpose: to answer the SOS, confront whatever dangers lay ahead, and prove that humanity could rise to the challenge. No matter how vast or terrifying the universe might be, the journey had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. After months of careful navigation, countless calculations, and constant monitoring of every system, humanity's fleet finally approached the coordinates given by the SOS. The ships had traveled further than any had before, venturing into uncharted regions of space where stars were sparse, and the darkness was deeper than anything seen from Earth. The silence of the void pressed on the fleet like a living thing, broken only by the steady hum of engines, the occasional alert from a distant probe, or the faint signals of the SOS that had guided them this far. Despite the training, the simulations, and the confidence in their war titans, every crew member felt a mix of excitement, fear, and awe. They were about to witness the unknown. As the fleet entered orbit around the SOS planet, the first images began streaming in from reconnaissance drones and long-range scanners. What they revealed was beyond anything most humans had imagined. The planet, once presumably teeming with life and civilization, was scarred by destruction. Cities that had likely been vibrant and thriving now lay in ruins. Craters marked the surface, smoke still rising from areas that had recently burned. Large sections of the planet appeared to have been flattened by some colossal force. The SOS was not a simple cry for help, it was a warning, a message encoded in desperation, conveying that the civilization below had already suffered catastrophic attacks. Lieutenant Arya Voss, along with her team, was among the first to analyze the data. Her fingers flew across the console as she enhanced images, adjusted sensor readings, and cross-referenced the signals with known patterns of destruction. She could see the remnants of buildings, the shattered remains of technology, and signs of struggle. Yet amidst the devastation there were hints of survival. Small pockets of light indicated habitation, suggesting that some of the planet's inhabitants had endured. The thought that life persisted gave Arya hope, but it also intensified the weight of responsibility. Humanity was here now, and every decision they made could mean life or death for those who had survived. The alien civilization was unlike anything humans had encountered before. Through the SOS and subsequent analysis, it became clear that their technology was advanced in ways both familiar and alien. Energy grids powered by unknown sources, structures that seemed to defy conventional physics, and communication systems that could transmit complex messages across light years. It was a civilization with intellect and capability comparable to humanity, yet their defenses had failed. This realization hit the crew hard. The attackers that had ravaged this world were unlike any threat humans had faced. If they were strong enough to bring such devastation to a capable civilization, humanity's war titans might be the only thing capable of stopping them. As the fleet prepared to descend closer to the planet, the aliens made their first contact. Small unmanned crafts approached cautiously, transmitting a series of signals that the communications team worked quickly to decode. It was not easy. The language was complex, layered with mathematical patterns and symbols that initially seemed abstract, but gradually the messages became clear. The aliens were frightened, yet grateful. They had been hiding from the aggressors, struggling to protect what remained of their population, and now, with the arrival of humanity's fleet, they dared to hope. The first live images of the alien beings shocked the crew. They were unlike humans in appearance, with elongated limbs, luminescent skin patterns, and eyes that seemed capable of perceiving a wider spectrum of light. Yet in their expressions, the humans saw something profoundly familiar: fear, desperation, hope, and relief. For a moment, it bridged the vast differences between species. Arya felt a deep sense of connection as she watched the aliens struggle to convey their plight. The SOS had been more than a signal, it had been a bridge across the cosmos, linking to civilizations through shared vulnerability. The aliens explained what had happened, using gestures, symbols, and the fragments of language that humanity had painstakingly decoded. A colossal enemy had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, attacking cities, infrastructure, and the population. Their weapons were devastating, faster and more precise than anything the aliens could defend against. Despite their technological prowess, they were overwhelmed. Their remaining forces had scattered into hidden enclaves, holding out as best they could. The aliens also shared strategic information, the enemy's movements, potential weaknesses, and patterns that could be exploited. It was the kind of intelligence that only a desperate, endangered species could provide. Painful, detailed, and terrifying. Arya and the fleet's commanders immediately began planning their next move. Deploying the war titans would be necessary, but strategy and coordination with the aliens were crucial. The goal was not merely to fight, but to save lives, minimize further destruction, and prevent the enemy from advancing to other worlds. Each titan had incredible firepower, but even the most advanced AI required precise targeting and careful planning when facing an opponent that had already caused widespread devastation. The crew worked tirelessly, overlaying alien intelligence with human tactical analysis, simulating scenarios to prepare for the inevitable confrontation for the aliens. The arrival of humanity's fleet was transformative. Their fear began to shift toward cautious hope. Small groups ventured from hiding, sharing information, and assisting with preparations. They showed the human crew locations of critical infrastructure, energy sources, and population clusters that needed protection. For the first time in months, the alien civilization experienced a sense of agency. They were no longer entirely at the mercy of their aggressors. Humanity's presence had given them a fighting chance. Despite the hope, the tension in the fleet remained high. The enemy was still out there, moving swiftly and efficiently, leaving trails of destruction in their wake. Scans showed enormous fleets approaching from different sectors, confirming that the threat was not limited to the SOS planet. Humanity was entering a battle on unfamiliar terrain, against an enemy whose motives, capabilities, and limits were still largely unknown. Every officer, pilot, and Titan operator knew that mistakes could be catastrophic. The margin for error was thin, and the stakes could not have been higher. Arya found herself spending long hours in the communications hub, coordinating with both the fleet and the aliens. She monitored signals, tracked enemy movements, and relayed strategic information. Every message carried weight. Every delay could cost lives. At times the work was overwhelming, and yet she could not stop. She understood the responsibility of her role. She was a lifeline between two civilizations, a conduit for information that could determine survival or destruction. Each pulse of data, each decoded signal, felt like a heartbeat connecting humans and aliens across space. The first reconnaissance missions to the surface confirmed the dire situation. Scouts reported heavily damaged cities, alien defenses in disarray, and signs of ongoing attacks. Survivors had fortified themselves in underground shelters, hidden valleys, and areas shielded by natural terrain. Yet even in these conditions, pockets of resilience remained. Communities worked to protect children, tend to the wounded, and preserve what knowledge and technology they could. Humanity was witnessing not just devastation but incredible courage, determination, and the will to survive. The SOS had not only been a cry for help but a testament to the strength of a civilization facing extinction. As the human fleet moved closer, there was also an increasing realization of the moral and ethical complexities involved. Decisions had to balance the protection of lives, the use of overwhelming force, and the long-term survival of the alien civilization. The war titans, powerful as they were, could cause collateral damage if not carefully directed. Commanders held tense meetings, discussing every possible outcome, every potential risk, and the need to coordinate with alien allies to minimize harm. Humanity's role had shifted from observers to protectors, a responsibility heavier than any had anticipated. Amidst the planning and tension, moments of connection and humanity shone through. Human and alien teams shared knowledge, exchanged ideas, and even stories of their respective worlds. The aliens marveled at human ingenuity, while humans learned of alien art, culture, and traditions. These moments of cross-species understanding strengthened the resolve of the fleet. They were not simply soldiers or machines. They were participants in a mission that required empathy, courage, and trust. The SOS had summoned not only war machines but the best qualities of humanity: intelligence, compassion, and the willingness to stand up for life itself. That as night fell over the planetary phenomenon observed through orbital cameras, that showed the dimming of lights in isolated settlement. Saria and her team continued to work. Every decision was critical, every signal analyzed, every potential outcome considered. The fleet prepared to deploy the war titans in coordinated strikes, designed to repel the enemy and protect the remaining population. Humanity had arrived in the theater of war, but it was not just a battle for territory. It was a battle for survival, a mission to defend life against overwhelming odds. And as the fleet held position above the devastated planet, scanning for enemy activity, Arya felt a mixture of awe, fear, and determination. The SOS that had brought them here was no longer a distant signal. It was real, urgent, and demanding action. The aliens were counting on them. Humanity had answered the call, and the next phase would test their courage, strategy, and resilience like never before. In that moment, hovering above the ruined cities and scattered survivors, it became clear the war for this world was about to begin, and humanity's greatest challenge and opportunity had arrived. The moment humanity had prepared for finally arrived. From orbit above the SOS planet, the fleet could see the enemy forces gathering. Massive dark ships, unlike anything humans had encountered, moved with alarming precision, their movements coordinated and deliberate. Sensors picked up energy signatures that pulsed with lethal intent. The enemy was not only strong, it was intelligent, adaptable, and relentless. Every crew member aboard the fleet's ships felt the tension in the air, a heavy, almost tangible weight. The war titans, humanity's greatest machines, were deployed in formation, their towering frames casting long shadows against the planet's surface as they prepared to engage. Lieutenant Daria Voss monitored the communications, relaying information between the fleet and the alien survivors below. She could hear the hum of the Titan's engines, the coordination between pilots, and the constant chatter of human commanders strategizing with alien leaders. The enemy was advancing quickly, and there was no time for hesitation. Every decision, every calculation, had to be precise. The stakes were unimaginably high. If the Titans failed, the remaining population of the SOS planet could be wiped out entirely, and humanity itself could face unforeseen consequences from a foe they barely understood. The first encounter was terrifying. The enemy fleet opened fire, energy beams streaking across space toward humanity's Titans. Explosions lit up the void, reflecting off the massive armored bodies of the machines. The Titans responded immediately, using their energy shields to absorb hits while returning fire with devastating precision. Each Titan moved with a combination of human intuition and AI-guided strategy, anticipating enemy maneuvers, coordinating attacks, and protecting weaker units. The battlefield became a complex dance of firepower, speed, and tactics, a spectacle of technological marvels, colliding in a deadly contest. Human pilots felt the adrenaline coursing through them as they navigated their Titans. Some were seasoned veterans, trained for years to handle these enormous machines. Others were engineers and technicians who had spent more time building and maintaining the Titans than piloting them. Yet, in this moment, all relied on instinct, training, and trust in their AI partners. Every movement mattered. One miscalculation could lead to catastrophic damage or loss of life. As lasers fired, missiles exploded, and energy shields flared, humanity's ingenuity was put to the ultimate test. Meanwhile, the aliens below watched in awe and hope. For months they had hidden, surviving in fear, unsure if anyone would come to their aid. Now, seeing the Titans descend and engage their oppressors, they felt a surge of courage. Some joined in strategically, using their knowledge of the terrain and technology to assist in the battle. Together, humans and aliens formed a coordinated defense, combining strengths and learning from each other in real time. The SOS had summoned not just machines of war, but the collaborative spirit of two civilizations fighting for survival. The battle raged for hours, with each side pushing to gain the upper hand. The enemy was relentless, deploying waves of ships and weaponry designed to overwhelm the Titans. Yet humanity's machines adapted quickly, using AI-driven tactics, coordinated maneuvers, and the ingenuity of their pilots to counter every move. Arya observed closely, issuing critical updates and recalculations, ensuring that the fleet's strategy evolved as the fight progressed. She could feel the tension building in her chest with every new enemy advance, knowing that every second counted. Amid the chaos, acts of bravery emerged. Pilots risked everything to protect alien civilians trapped in the middle of the conflict, maneuvering their Titans to shield them from incoming fire. Engineers on board mobile support ships performed daring repairs mid-battle, ensuring that disabled Titans could return to the fight. Teams of analysts and strategists worked tirelessly, scanning enemy patterns, predicting attacks, and guiding reinforcements to the most critical areas. The combination of human courage, technological prowess, and alien knowledge created a dynamic, adaptive force capable of confronting an enemy previously thought unstoppable. Despite the intense action, Arya never lost sight of the broader mission. She coordinated with alien leaders to identify safe zones for survivors, direct evacuation routes, and establish communication hubs that could relay real-time information between the ground and the fleet. The SOS planet was a dangerous battlefield, and minimizing civilian casualties required meticulous planning under extreme pressure. Every new signal she decoded, every alert she sent, was a lifeline for those still clinging to hope. Her role, though less visible than the pilots on the front lines, was crucial to the mission's success. As the Titans pushed forward, they began to turn the tide. Strategic strikes crippled key enemy ships, while combined efforts of humans and aliens disrupted supply lines and communication networks. Slowly but surely, the enemy's momentum faltered. Their attacks became less coordinated, their defenses weaker. Humanity's Titans were not just powerful, they were smart, adaptive, and relentless. The battlefield, once dominated by fear and uncertainty, began to shift in favor of those fighting for survival and justice. Even amidst victory, the cost of war was clear. Several Titans were damaged or destroyed, some human pilots and alien allies were injured or killed, and entire sectors of the planet were left scarred by the conflict. Humanity had come to protect life, yet the realities of combat meant that sacrifice was unavoidable. The fleet mourned its losses while pressing forward, knowing that stopping the enemy entirely was the only way to prevent further destruction. Arya's heart ached as she coordinated recovery efforts, every alert reminding her of the delicate balance between strategy and humanity. The climax of the battle came when the enemy deployed their most advanced and dangerous forces, massive ships with destructive capabilities far beyond anything previously encountered. Humanity's war Titans, alongside the alien allies, engaged in a final, decisive confrontation. Explosions lit the void, energy beams clashed in dazzling displays, and the Titans moved with precision, striking critical targets and protecting allied ships. Pilots and engineers worked in perfect synchronization with AI systems, demonstrating the extraordinary synergy between human creativity and machine intelligence. Every move was a test of skill, courage, and adaptability, and the outcome would determine the survival of an entire civilization. After what felt like an eternity, the enemy's forces were finally broken. Remaining ships fled or were neutralized, their devastating attacks no longer a threat. The battle had been fierce, costly, and exhausting, but humanity had succeeded. The war Titans, though battered and damaged, stood victorious. The alien survivors emerged from hiding, their gratitude and relief palpable. They had been saved, not just by power, but by the combined courage, intelligence, and determination of humanity. The SOS, once a desperate cry echoing across the cosmos, had been answered in full measure. As the battlefield quieted, Arya and her team worked to stabilize communications, provide assistance to survivors, and assess damage. The Titans were repaired, the wounded cared for, and critical infrastructure restored as best as possible. Humanity's arrival had not only stopped the enemy, but had also laid the groundwork for a partnership between the two civilizations. Through the chaos and violence, a bond had formed, one built on trust, courage, and the shared experience of surviving against overwhelming odds. Even in victory, lessons were clear. The universe was vast, full of dangers, and completely unpredictable. The SOS planet was only one small part of a much larger reality, where threats could emerge anywhere, and humanity's greatest strengths, its courage, intelligence, and resilience, would always be tested. The Titans had proven their power, but more importantly, humanity had proven its spirit. The war had been fought not just with machines, but with hearts, minds, and a commitment to life. Arya stood on the bridge of her ship, looking out at the quieted battlefield below. Smoke still rose from ruined cities, but there were signs of recovery. Humans and aliens worked side by side, coordinating efforts to rebuild, protect survivors, and learn from the events that had unfolded. The SOS had summoned more than war titans. It had summoned the best qualities of humanity: bravery, empathy, and the determination to rise to a challenge that seemed impossible in the aftermath. The fleet held a moment of reflection. Pilots, engineers, analysts, and alien allies shared stories, mourned losses, and celebrated survival. The SOS had been answered, the enemy defeated, and the planet spared from complete destruction. Yet the memory of the battle remained, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the extraordinary courage required to protect it. Humanity had stepped into the cosmos, not just as explorers or conquerors, but as defenders, proving that even in the darkest moments, hope, strategy, and bravery could prevail. And so, as the war titan stood tall amidst the quieted chaos, humanity prepared for the next steps, aiding the aliens in rebuilding their civilization, strengthening alliances, and learning from a battle that had tested every skill, instinct, and piece of technology available. The SOS had summoned war machines, yes, but it had also summoned the heart of humanity, capable of facing fear, overcoming obstacles, and answering a call for help that had echoed across the stars. The universe had been tested, and humanity had risen to the challenge. The battle was finally over. The enemy had been defeated, their ships scattered or destroyed, and the surviving alien civilization began to emerge from hiding. The atmosphere across the SOS planet was one of cautious relief. Smoke still drifted from cities and battlefields, and the landscape bore scars of destruction, but life had survived. Humanity's war titans, though battered and worn from the prolonged conflict, stood as a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and the ability to rise to an unprecedented challenge. The victory, however, was only the beginning. The real work, the recovery, the rebuilding, and the forging of trust had just begun. Lieutenant Aria Voss and her team spent hours coordinating with the alien leaders, mapping safe zones for survivors, and prioritizing resources for immediate aid. The aliens were still fearful, traumatized by the attacks, but their hope was rekindled. The SOS had been answered not just with power, but with compassion, and this gave the survivors a renewed sense of life and purpose. Aria watched as small groups ventured into the open, helping neighbors, assisting the wounded, and repairing what they could. Humanity's presence had turned despair into determination, showing that they were not alone, and that their lives mattered to more than themselves. The Titans, the symbols of humanity's strength, became tools for rebuilding as well as for defense. Massive robotic arms cleared debris, lifted heavy structures, and transported supplies across devastated areas. Human engineers worked alongside alien technicians, learning from each other's technology, combining knowledge to repair energy grids, restore communication systems, and rebuild infrastructure. The battlefield, once a place of destruction and fear, gradually transformed into a hub of cooperation, with humans and aliens working side by side. It was a profound moment, where the outcome of war had led not only to survival, but to understanding and unity between two civilizations. The alien leaders were deeply grateful, expressing their appreciation in ways both verbal and symbolic. Arya, who had been in constant communication with them during the conflict, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Every signal she had decoded, every command she had issued, had contributed to saving lives. The SOS that had seemed like a distant, faint cry in the void had become the catalyst for a bond that transcended species and space. Humanity had shown that power without compassion was meaningless, and that even in the vast, lonely stretches of the cosmos, life could be preserved through courage, intelligence, and empathy. In the days that followed, humanity worked tirelessly to stabilize the planet. They helped the aliens set up temporary shelters, restore food and water supplies, and create systems to monitor security and potential threats. The alien technology, though unfamiliar, proved adaptable, and human engineers found ways to integrate their own knowledge, creating hybrid systems that were stronger and more resilient than either species could have achieved alone. These early efforts laid the foundation for a long-term partnership, ensuring that the civilization could recover and thrive without being immediately vulnerable to future attacks. Arya reflected on the human cost of the mission. Several Titans had been destroyed or severely damaged, and lives both human and alien had been lost. Every survivor carried the memories of friends, colleagues, and family members who had sacrificed themselves for the greater good. These losses weighed heavily on everyone, a reminder that heroism often came with profound cost. Yet the triumph, the knowledge that countless lives had been saved and that the SOS planet had a chance to rebuild, brought hope and renewed determination. Humanity had proven that, even in the darkest times, courage and cooperation could prevail. The aliens began sharing their culture, knowledge, and history with the humans. They taught them about their art, architecture, science, and philosophy. For the human crew, this was a revelation, an opportunity to understand life in a way they never had before. In return, humans shared stories of Earth, of human struggles and achievements, of triumphs and failures. The two civilizations began to learn from each other, not as conquerors and subjects, but as partners and equals. What began as a mission to answer a call for help was transforming into an exchange of knowledge and culture, a relationship built on respect and mutual understanding. Arya also observed the psychological transformation among the survivors. The aliens, who had been hiding in fear, now moved with purpose and hope. They organized communities, established governance systems, and coordinated with humans to maintain security. Children, once terrified by the sounds of destruction, began to play in safe areas, learning from both humans and their own elders. It was a sign that life, resilience, and the human spirit, or perhaps the universal spirit of life itself, could endure even after unimaginable trauma. The SOS had been more than a call for help. It had been a spark that reignited the will to survive. As preparations for return began, humanity faced difficult decisions. Some wanted to stay and continue assisting the alien civilization, ensuring stability and long-term recovery. Others recognized that Earth needed its people and resources, and that humanity's role was to help in ways that did not create dependence. The balance between providing aid and fostering independence required careful planning. Arya and the leadership teams worked to establish protocols, training programs, and systems that allowed the aliens to continue rebuilding while remaining ready to defend themselves if future threats appeared. It was a delicate task, but one that would determine the future of both species. News of humanity's mission spread across the galaxy. The tale of the SOS, the arrival of the War Titans, and the courage of humans in defending another civilization became legendary. It was a story of hope, bravery, and unity, showing that even in a universe filled with unknown dangers, compassion and determination could triumph. Earth celebrated the heroes of the mission. Arya, the pilots, the engineers, and every crew member were honored. But the true reward was knowing that countless lives had been saved and that humanity had proven itself capable of greatness beyond its own planet. The experience left a lasting mark on everyone involved. Humans and aliens alike understood that the universe was vast and full of challenges, but also full of possibilities. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and destruction together, and had emerged stronger and wiser. Lessons had been learned about trust, strategy, sacrifice, and the importance of acting with both strength and empathy. Humanity had not only defended life, but had established a legacy of courage and collaboration that would influence generations to come as the human fleet prepared to depart. Arya took a moment to look over the SOS planet from orbit. Cities were slowly being rebuilt, communities were forming, and life was beginning to thrive once more. Smoke still rose from some areas, a reminder of the cost of war, but the resilience and determination of the survivors shone brighter. Humanity had answered the call, not with arrogance or conquest, but with the conviction that every life mattered. The SOS had summoned more than machines of war. It had summoned the courage, intelligence, and compassion that defined humanity at its best. The journey home was quiet, reflective, and filled with a sense of accomplishment tempered by humility. Crew members discussed what they had learned, shared stories of bravery and innovation, and thought about the families and civilizations they had touched. The SOS had changed everything. It had shown that humanity was not just capable of exploring the stars, but of answering calls for help, protecting life, and forging connections that transcended the boundaries of species, culture, and distance. When Earth finally came into view, it seemed smaller, yet infinitely more precious. Humans who had faced the vastness of space, the horrors of war, and the challenges of cross-species collaboration returned home with a renewed sense of purpose. They had seen the fragility and resilience of life on another world and had realized that humanity's responsibility extended far beyond its own planet. The SOS had taught them that courage, compassion, and determination were the true titans of war, not just machines of metal and firepower. In the months and years that followed, the bond between humans and the SOS planet's survivors strengthened. Trade, knowledge exchange, and mutual support created a lasting alliance. Humanity had demonstrated that it could rise to meet any challenge, and the SOS planet had learned that even in the darkest moments, hope could be found, and allies could be trusted. The SOS that had traveled across the void had sparked not only a rescue mission, but a legacy of unity, bravery, and the enduring spirit of life. And so, as Arya reflected on the mission, she realized the full impact of the journey. Humanity had answered a distant cry for help, faced unimaginable challenges, and emerged victorious not only in battle but in spirit. The SOS had summoned machines of war, but it had also summoned the best of humanity: courage, empathy, intelligence, and resilience. It was a triumph that would be remembered for generations, a story of life saved, hope restored, and the enduring power of answering the call when it mattered most. Humanity had proven that even in the vast unknown reaches of the cosmos, it could stand as a force for good, a protector of life, and a true titan of the universe.